Jack Unheard. Savage. President Trump just scorched Rand Paul and has the entire GOP Senate losing it. And it's a quote. I'd rather just play the video. I don't want to read the quote and then you hear it again.
Everybody showed up. I figured you'd have I'd say 40 would have been a good number, right? If everybody, we're just missing one person. You'll never guess who that is.
Rand Paul.
Let me give you, he automatically votes no on everything. He thinks it's good politics. It's really not good politics. He's an automatic no. But I don't know. Look, if he wanted to come, I'd probably let him come, right? I'd let him come. Begrudgingly, but would let him come. A national Republican.
All right. Taking jabs at Rand Paul. Look, Senator Rand Paul's main reason for not voting for the CR bill, he did vote with Democrats to shut down the government. And his reasoning is because the CR bill just adds more debt to the national deficit. And he says anything that adds to the national deficit, he's always going to vote no on. So I assume he's done exactly that, at least in recent years. But anyway, I've got this from Senator Rand Paul. We don't blow up boats off Miami because 25% of the time suspicion is wrong. We shouldn't do it off Venezuela either. These are small outboards with no fentanyl and no path to Florida. Well, the U.S. military, they would argue against that. They say that they get confirmation from intel, from sources on the ground, that these boats are loaded with drugs. So, I don't know. I think I would just take the word probably from the military, who's supposedly out there doing it. Anyway, we can't just kill indiscriminately because we're not at war. It's summary execution. Everyone gets a trial because sometimes the system gets it wrong. Even the worst of the worst in our country get due process. The bottom line is that execution without process is not justice, and blowing up foreign ships is a recipe for chaos. I mean, I guess my question would be is if the military sees these vessels leaving the Venezuela coastline, and if they are leaving the Venezuela coastline, which direction are they going? And how far out in open water are they going? I would just kind of follow my common sense as to where they're going. What kind of a vessel do they have? Do they have fishing gear? Do they have fishing nets? Do they have fishing rod? Like, what exactly are they doing out there in the middle of the ocean? Because the boats that they keep showing that they're blowing up, they don't exactly look like that they've got a bunch of gear to go out there and go fishing or like chartering the waters with families or anything like that. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, here, I'm going to play this. This is on Piers Morgan.
We have dangerous people in a lot of American cities, but we just don't go in and shoot them. I mean, we have trials, they get legal representation. And even on the high seas, it's been that way for generations. If you go off the coast of Miami, the Coast Guard will be stopping boats today. And about 25% of the boats that they stop, that they're suspicious of drugs, there won't be any drugs on board. So 25% of the time the suspicion is wrong. And that's why we don't shoot and just blow up boats off of Miami, but neither should we be blowing them up off the coast of Venezuela.
Ain't Miami.
Number one, there is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it's not being trafficked in. I mean, it very well could be trafficked in. I mean, a lot of the fentanyl's not made in the United States either, but it finds its way in here regardless.
These are outboard boats that, in order for them to get to Miami, would have to stop and refuel 20 times.
Well, look, I've made that argument, not the whole refilling 20 times, but I've made that argument on this show that these boats don't look like vessels that could even theoretically travel from Venezuela, which is in South America. It's on the northern coast of South America, traveling all the way through the Caribbean Sea, all the way up to, I guess, the southern tip of Florida. There's no way that these outboard motor boats can travel that far. It's just not possible. So I've made that argument before. So if they're not traveling directly to the United States, what intelligence or what knowledge does the military have that they are a simple, or like, stepping stoning their way from island to island on their way to America? I've really pushed back against that because that doesn't make any sense that these vessels are traveling directly from Venezuela straight to the United States filled up with drugs. Although the drugs that are on these boats will probably find their way to the United States. I just want to know exactly where they're going to, because I really doubt that they're going straight from there all the way up to the U.S.
More likely going to Trinidad and
It's like
Tobago,
1,000 miles, probably way longer than
right
that.
off of the coast of Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons to be worried about this. But number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? When you're at war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's supposed to be thoughtful. It's supposed to be debated. And we're not supposed to do it willy-nilly. And then when you have war, you just kill people in the war zone. And even then there are rules of engagement. But interdicting drugs has always been a criminal activity and a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people. We actually present evidence and convict them.
Yeah, look, I don't fully agree with them blowing these vessels out of the water. However, I just leave my assumption up to the U.S. military that they've got good enough intelligence to determine that the drugs that are in these vessels, they might not be going directly to the U.S., but one way or another, they're going to find their way into the U.S. because I'm sure that these drug cartels, I'm sure they've got a very sophisticated network all throughout the Caribbean. They might be going to Aruba first. They might be going to possibly Jamaica, even though I think even Jamaica is probably way too far for these outboard motors traveling from Venezuela. But all right, anyway, so this also is from Rand Paul. As I told Piers Morgan on Piers Uncensored, Washington's fake choice is a $2 trillion deficit or a $3 trillion deficit. I say choose neither. Both parties are spinning us into oblivion. I'll keep fighting for a real solution. Balance the budget with real across-the-board cuts or no more passing the buck.
In Rand Paul, who's joined us, the senators earned the president's ire this week for criticizing both the budget and the U.S. strikes on Venezuelan boats, and joins me again. Welcome back to Uncensored, Senator Paul. Thank you very much for taking the time. First of all, let's just go through the two things which have wound up Donald Trump. Your objection, first of all, to the budget.
Well, the way I look at it, there are two choices that have been put forward. A Republican choice, which would lead to about a $2 trillion deficit next year. A Democrat choice, which would lead to about $3 trillion in deficit.
Yeah, 3.5
People
at
say,
least.
well, take one or the other. And I say, well, I don't really like either one of them. It's sort of like the deficit of $37 trillion. Whose fault is it, Republicans or Democrats? And
both.
My answer is yes. It's really both parties. So I put forward a third possibility, and that would be that we balance the budget over 5 years by gradually having across-the-board cuts each year for 5 years. And
I 100%
agree
agree with that.
And I just can't find myself voting for spending levels that don't decrease the deficit, but actually increase the deficit next year.
And then moving to the issue of
that's partially what Trump ran on.
Boats being attacked. The administration's
isn't that the point of Doge?
They think they're dangerous.
Trying to reduce the deficit?
Representing a direct threat to the lives of Americans, and that's why they're doing it.
Look, and see, that was another problem that I had with Trump's tax cuts, because by him allowing these tax cuts to occur, and now we get to pay a lot less in taxes, it adds another $5 trillion to the deficit over a period of time, because you can't cut taxes without reducing the size of the government, or at least reduce federal spending, because where's the money going to come from? Okay, we're going to cut taxes, but in order to do that, you're going to have to cut a lot of the government out in order to get it even. Otherwise, you're just going to have to tack on that money up to the deficit. So I definitely didn't agree with the tax cuts, not fully, at least not in the way that they took them. They should have decreased a lot of government spending and then pushed the tax cuts off to the American people.
What is your objection to the way they're executing this strategy?
Well, we have dangerous people in a lot of American cities, but we just don't go in and shoot them. We have trials, they get legal representation.
All right, so we heard that.
Stop. Just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela. These are out. There's a lot of reasons to be worried about this, but number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? Activity in a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people, we actually present evidence and convict them.
Donald Trump, as I said, responded with some ire to your positions here. He said, whatever happened to Senator Rand Paul? He was never great, but he went really bad, in capitals. I got him elected twice in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, but he just never votes positively for the Republican Party.
He probably would have been elected
He's a nasty
regardless.
Little guy, much like Congressman Thomas Massie, a.k.a. Rand Paul Jr., also of Kentucky, which I won 3 times.
Rand Paul ran against him for president in 2016.
A sick wacko who refuses to vote for our great Republican Party, MAGA or America First. It's really weird. Your response?
I don't take it too seriously. I've known President Trump for over a decade. I played golf with him a couple dozen times. I actually enjoy his company and his personality most of the time. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to be a rubber stamp or agree with everything. The idea that it is weird to believe in a balanced budget or weird to believe that we should only vote for spending proposals that put forward less debt than the year before, I think the American people would disagree with that assessment. I think the people that I represent and the people who voted for me voted more because I'm very honest and forthright that we have a spending problem, we have a debt problem, and that really both parties are guilty of it. I would say, if anything, my support right now in Kentucky is higher than it's ever been. And really from people all across the spectrum, Republicans, Democrats, and independents coming up to me and say, we respect, your ability to stand firm for principles as opposed to just bending the knee or kissing the ring.
Yeah, because look, the national deficit, I mean, that gives him a reason to vote no on a whole slew of different things. So if he takes a hard stance on that, then yeah, there's probably shitloads of stuff that he doesn't vote on or that he votes no to. Anyway, so Rand Paul, once again, in case you haven't checked the national debt clock in a while, here are the current numbers. Notice that our debt to GDP ratio is 120% down on the bottom right. So they did add the Doge clock so far, $679 billion saved. Whatever that means, it doesn't look like it's having any effect on the national deficit at all. I mean, we're probably in the next few days, we're going to hit $38 trillion, which per citizen amounts to $110,355. That is every single American man, woman, and child. Now, as far as the debt per taxpayer, someone who's actually paying taxes, that amounts to $326,000. That's a house. That's actually not quite the average cost of a house in America today, but it's pretty damn close. That is absolutely insane. So, yeah, I definitely stand with Rand Paul on that we should absolutely figure out how to get this spending under control, because even if we get to a point where we can start paying back on the deficit, it's going to take over 100 years to pay all this back. It's going to take absolutely forever. It's ridiculous. More than $250,000 for every taxpayer has to pay all of that back, because at the end of the day, it has to come from taxpayers. Who else is it going to come from? I mean, I guess corporate tax, but that's not going to be substantial enough to really fix the problem. Not anytime soon. All right, Congresswoman Laura Lee, as our national debt surpasses $38 trillion, it's clear Washington's spending habits are unsustainable. Democrats' so-called clean continuing resolution adds over $1.5 trillion in new deficits through bloated subsidies and spending mandates. Enough is enough. Republicans passed a no-nonsense temporary funding bill in September. Democrats have now rejected it 11 times. America deserves better. Well, according to Rand Paul, even this no-nonsense temporary funding bill, even that adds money or adds debt to the national deficit. I mean, Rand Paul, he used the number $2 trillion that this clean CR would add to the deficit. So, or maybe he was talking about the spending bill that's due to come up at the end of November. I think it's like November 18th or something like that when the next spending bill is due to get passed, which doesn't sound like it's going to. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, I hope you take a quick second to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And check out The Swamp, which drops Monday through Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern, covering the daily happenings inside the federal machine. Thank you very much for watching.